Chapter 1, Contractual Marriage. Reign Master Kingdom, Prince Aki's Mansion. Young Prince Aki got married today, and the grand occasion shocked the whole city. People all over the city gathered around Prince Aki's mansion to watch the excitement. The palace was decorated with lanterns and colorful decorations, and the doors were full of joy. There were more guests than expected, and the banquet had been placed on the 10-mile long street outside the gate. After 3 rounds of wine, tonight's groom, Aki King Suyuchi, looked a little drunk with a light pink on his stern face, which actually added some softness. This little prince, who was known for his cold-blooded and iron-faced character and who wielded the power of a 1,000,000-strong army, actually looked like this. It was obvious that he had drunk a lot of wine. Suyuchi raised his hands to the young Emperor Rong Changjin and several senior officials at the main table. Your Majesty, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy yourself. Yuchi will take his leave now. Someone on the seat was booing. You should have gone to the bridal chamber a long time ago. Go quickly, go quickly. Brother Yu is here to help you with the situation. The one who booed was the other auxiliary king of the dynasty, King Qi Yunxiang of Yunxiang. It's just, dear brother, you are marrying 2 concubines at the same time today, so don't favor one over the other. King Yunxiang had a pair of red and phoenix eyes with delicate features. When he said this, there was a little bit of teasing in his slender eyes, which made him look a little crazy. But because he looks so delicate, this madman is not an eyesore, but rather charming. King Aki glanced at him, his cold and stern eyes like a penetrating sharp blade. King Yunxiang couldn't help but shudder, shrugged, and closed his mouth knowingly. King Aki withdrew his sharp eyes, nodded to everyone, turned and left. Not long after King Aki left, the knowledgeable King Yunxiang followed him, including the little emperor. Many black figures followed one after another. Before Yunxiang and the little emperor followed them to the door of the backyard, they heard King Aki's voice as cold as ice. Su Jia, anyone who dares to come to the king's bridal chamber tonight will be killed without mercy. Yes, your majesty. Throw out all the young men hiding in the bridal chamber to me. Yes, your majesty. Yunxiang stopped immediately and stared with a pair of peach blossom eyes. Your majesty, did you hear clearly what a Qi said? On this happy day, he actually... The little emperor also spread his hands helplessly. This devil, the god of death. Oh, what can I do? I also want to see the excitement tonight, but I also cherish my life. Looking at the colorful backyard with twinkling lights, the little emperor and King Yunxiang sighed in vain. King Yunxiang sighed regretfully. Forget it. Just watch the fun and risk your life. It's not worth it. The little emperor shook his head and kept saying, Aki has such a temperament that he does not recognize his relatives. He paused for a moment, full of doubts and expectations. But tonight, will Aki stay in the maid's room or in the gladiator room? King Yunxiang leaned into the young emperor's ear and said, I think, your majesty, you should be worried about when the princess will come in. Rong Changjin was confused. Is it my imperial sister sent to Xuangu Kingdom by Aki? King Yunxiang's single phoenix eye flickered slightly, but his mouth was calm. That's what happened, but there's no guarantee that no one will inform the princess about it. After all, there are so many people waiting to see the excitement. Rong Changjin glanced at Qi Yunxiang doubtfully. Since Aki took her away, wouldn't he not take precautions? King Yunxiang said, no matter how tight the net is, there will still be omissions. You think so, your majesty? Rong Changjin, possibly. Yunxiu Hall. The hall was full of splendor, and the newlywed Ling Ziki was sitting dignifiedly on the edge of the bed. She was wearing a bright red wedding dress and a hijab like a mandarin duck playing in the water, looking very happy. King Aki pushed open the door and entered. Ling Ziki trembled in shock and immediately sat upright and more reserved. Error 500, server error. 1500, that's an error. There was an error. Please try again later. That's all we know. The dragon and phoenix wedding candles were burning brightly. The painting hall was as warm as spring. There was Hasheen wine on the table, and a platter of dried fruits with good meanings such as dates, peanuts, longans, chestnuts, etc. King Aki stood in front of the table, picked up the jug, poured a glass of wine, and drank it all in one gulp. People who lead soldiers in war cannot be expected to be gentle, but Ling Ziki caught a glimpse of King Aki's face from the corner of his eye, and his heart sank uncontrollably. He was obviously wearing a bright red wedding dress, and his eyebrows were as beautiful as a painting. His face was white and pink due to drinking, but his temperament was as cold as an iceberg that had lasted 10,000 years. As expected, he was an ironclad war king who returned from the bloody battlefield. "Aye," Ling Ziki said timidly. "I'm not afraid." King Aki looked at the shivering Ling Ziki. A look of helplessness flashed across his cold and solemn eyebrows, and his tone softened. "You are my concubine. How can you be worthy of your status as a princess?" Ling Ziki lowered his head, frowned lightly, biting his red lips like a red plum blossoming, revealing a little bit of white pistil. He glanced at King Aki from the corner of his eye and immediately closed his eyes. AI didn't say anything for a while. King Aki glanced at her, sighed, threw the scale beam on the bedside, and said, "It's getting late. You should rest early." He turned around and walked out. Ling Ziki panicked. She didn't know where she got the courage. She rushed behind King Aki, hugged King Aki's waist from behind, and clasped his hands tightly in front of King Aki. Tears fell down his face. "Your Majesty, are you going to leave? Today is the wedding day of your Majesty and my concubine. Please stay, okay?" King Aki frowned. "Let go." Ling Ziki was frightened by King Aki's angry voice, but he had the courage not to let go. "My lord, are you going to that gladiator? My lord, do you really like that lowly gladiator, as people outside said? He is a man. Does your lord really not care about his face? How presumptuous. Are you allowed to intervene in my king's affairs?" After hearing several clicks, Ling Ziki's hand trembled and dropped. King Aki actually broke off her fingers. Chapter 2, a beautiful man becomes his wife. Probably because he didn't expect his attack to be so severe, King Aki turned around and looked at his newlywed wife, who was holding her hands in pain and trembling into a ball. He couldn't bear it, but he still said with a cold face, "Your marriage with me is a contract. You will be my concubine, and I can give you the glory and wealth of being my princess, but you should not have any more delusions about conjugal love." King Aki opened the door, stepped into the night with one foot, but paused again. Looking at the magnificent night decorated with red lanterns outside the door, his eyes suddenly became deep, and he added in a deep voice, "Love, love, love, I will never give it to you. You should give up this idea. Your Majesty, I don't want any glory or wealth, and I don't want any rights as a princess. I just want to be a loving couple with you." The shrill cries were drowned in the noise coming from the front yard. Ling Ziki chased him to the door and knelt down at the foot of the steps. However, he saw King Aki's back as straight as a pine and cypress walking far away, heading towards the gladiator's Shiyuan bridal chamber. Shiyuan, in front of Jinshu building. King Aki has been standing with his hands behind his back for a long time. A tall figure was reflected in the window upstairs. The figure held a pot in one hand and a cup in the other, drinking one cup after another without stopping. This man's actions are full of grace and carelessness, which is completely different from the descriptions of those gladiators who bleed, sweat, and are brutal and rough in the arena. For a moment, Aki King Tsuyu even doubted whether he was a gladiator after all. "It's more revealing. Your Majesty, let's talk in the room." The figure upstairs finally spoke. His words were gentle and indifferent as a tasteless cold drink. King Aki walked up the stairs in a few steps, pushed the door open and closed it slowly, with no delay in his movements. The figure in front of the window turned around and finally saw his face clearly. A face with delicate features and delicate features, with sharp edges and corners, yet not overwhelming. A pair of slender eyes, as dark as ink, yet distant and indifferent in their depth. It is an appearance that can confuse all sentient beings. Su Jie's eye for picking people is indeed vicious, but it doesn't seem to be easy to control. But that's fine. What the Aki Palace needs is not an obedient slave, but a master who can support the palace. King Aki picked up the wine glass on the table and took 2 steps towards him. He handed the glass to him and said, "Pour me a glass too." The hand holding the pot was steady, and he filled a glass of wine without spilling a drop. The red sleeves of his robe touched the back of King Aki's hand, and King Aki raised his eyebrows and glanced at him. He smiled distantly, as if he didn't realize it. King Aki raised his glass and drank it in one gulp without leaving a drop. He said indifferently, "What's your name?" "My surname is Pan, pronounced mean. My given name is Yi, and my given name is Xianlin." His gentle gaze rested on King Aki's carved face. "Aside from not knowing my name, do you also not know my gender?" It wasn't a questioning tone, nor was it a hint of ridicule. It was just an ordinary question, but the tone was still light and tasteless. King Aki handed over the empty cup again and motioned for Shanyi to pour the wine. He avoided Danya's question and said, "Shanyi, are you originally from Sichuan?" Pan Yi pinched the body of the pot with his slender fingers and filled a glass of wine for King Aki with elegant and smooth movements. He gave a faint sarcastic smile at the corner of his mouth. "Kawakami Sarah's family? I can't afford it. I'm just a homeless man who doesn't even have a home. I can't remember my place of origin." The Kawakami Sarah family is a large family. Among the families in the Uemi Kingdom, it ranks first in power and is famous for being rich in wise men and swordsmen. King Aki looked at Pan Yi without hesitation and looked at him deeply. "A tramp? Does a tramp have a name and a surname?" Shanai asked calmly, "Who stipulates that homeless people cannot have names, surnames, and characters?" "That's right." King Aki stared at him for a moment, knowing that he was lying, but he was still very calm. However, in the Rainmaster Kingdom, and even in the entire Dongzhou continent, more than half of the people find it troublesome and don't like it, putting a character or nickname after the name. But the people of the Pan family like to use words or nicknames. King Aki suddenly poured the cup into his mouth and raised his eyebrows and smiled brightly at Pan Yeji. "Xianlin, do you still have a nickname?" The shadow of the candle swayed, and against the backdrop of the red wedding dress, the face that was as cold as an iceberg for thousands of years was actually very vivid. "No." But Yan Yi was still gentle. His eyes reflected the same gloomy red wedding dress, but there was no smile at all. Chapter 3 masters compete against each other. King Aki suppressed his smile, but he still couldn't hold back the corners of his mouth. He raised a curve that seemed to be a smile, but not a smile. Suddenly, he had an evil face. Fortunately not. Otherwise, I would have thought you were from the Dan family. Pan Yi frowned. "So, what if he's from the Pan family?" King Aki held an empty cup and seemed to be deep in thought. For a moment, he relaxed his lips and said, "Not at all." A trace of unpredictable emotion flashed in his eyes. Ban Yi put the unpredictable look behind his eyes, but did not dwell on the issue. He took the initiative to refill King Aki's wine, his eyebrows still gentle. "Your Majesty has not answered my question yet." "What's the problem?" King Aki pretended not to know. "Why did you marry me as your concubine? I am a man, do you know that?" There was no expression on Shanya's face, and there was no warmth in his words. It was impossible to tell whether he was angry or not, but it can be judged that his face can really confuse all living beings. King Aki held the wine glass and poured it down. A few drops of wine were on the corner of his lips without knowing it. His eyes stayed on Pan Ye's beautiful face. "Of course, I want to continue the family lineage of the Su family." The corners of her lips were slightly raised, and she smiled evilly. The wine beads reflected the clear light of the candlelight and the color of the wedding dress, adding to the charm. Pan looked away calmly. "My lord, are you humane and capable? Do you need to borrow a seed?" Any bloody man, when he hears the sentence, should have only two reactions: either go up and beat him until he is inhumane, or prove to him whether he can be humane or not. King Aki was not angry, nor did he intend to take action. Instead, he stretched out his slender fingers to lift Danya's beautiful curved chin and raised his eyebrows. "Can you do it? You will know later." Pan lowered his eyebrows and looked at the hand against his chin. The shape of the hand was very beautiful. The fingers were thin and slender. The joints were distinct, and there was a thin callus on the tiger's mouth. It could be judged that it was caused by holding weapons all the time. Banyi stared at it for a long time, then suddenly raised the wine bottle and tilted his head upward. The clear liquid flowed down and flowed steadily into his open mouth, without even a drop spilling. It is clearly a very frivolous gesture, but when he does it, it gives people a feeling of elegance and elegance. The rich aroma of wine hit his nostrils, and King Aki was almost startled for a moment. "I have experienced the turbulent and undercurrents in the court, and I have conquered the battlefield where blood and bones were ablaze. What kind of battles have I not seen? But this gentle town is the only place that the heroic war king has never seen." A bottle of wine was poured into his mouth without leaving a drop. The wine bottle flew out of Shanya's hand, drew a strange arc, and landed steadily on the brocade red table. The technique is extremely beautiful. His slender arms were put around King Aki's shoulders, and a gentle voice sounded in his ears. "Young prince, please rest." The breath is slightly warm. The sudden movement made King Aki freeze, and even his voice seemed stiff. "Shanya, you are drunk. I am going to sleep in Concubine Ling's room. After all, sleeping with a man in your arms is not as comfortable as sleeping with a woman in your arms." King Aki's first reaction was to push away the warm body that was pressing against him. The impact was so strong that Danyi staggered back a big step. Panya's body made a very beautiful and quick turn, and her clothes, as bright as the morning glow, flew through the air, like a rock spreading its wings, and the wings flew across King Aki's eyes, a shimmering red. Kankan stood still and did not bully him again. Instead, he raised the corners of his lips and said in a seductive voice, "Go to that girl's room, so you can prove to me, young prince, that you are really inhumane." King Aki paused as he left, half turned around. His eyes were a little grim. "Don't just rely on me to be in a good mood today and don't want to see any luck, so you dare to talk nonsense." Shanya's eyes remained calm and calm. "Xianlin doesn't dare. I'm just telling the truth." Having a personality is certainly not a big problem, but in this palace, self-righteousness and lack of sense of propriety will not be tolerated. The wine glass that King Aki had forgotten to put down suddenly flew out of his hand, and like lightning, it went straight to Shanya's face. Chapter 4, Carrying on the Family Lineage. In a short distance, the cold air brought by the wine glass hit Panyi like a sharp blade. Panyi tilted his head slightly, and the wine glass passed by his ears and hit the emerald flower bottle on the grate behind him. The wine glass went out through the flower bottle, hit the wall, and broke to pieces. The flower bottle was not moved at all. Only 2 holes were broken in the bottle body. This shows how powerful it is, how fast, how ingenious the technique is. Sujia's voice sounded outside the door. "King, do you need a slave to come in?" "No need." King Aki replied lightly. Panyi stood tall, and the green hair beside his ears was picked up by the strong wind. A few of them were cut off by the wind blade brought by the wine glass and fluttered on the sapphire floor tiles. He actually dodged King Aki's attack easily. "Your agility is good. I heard that you are one of the best gladiators in the Rainmaster Kingdom. It seems that you are well-deserved." "Did you just hear about it? I am a gladiator in your Prince Aki's palace. Didn't you never pay attention to the situation in your own palace before?" Shanya's delicate eyebrows raised slightly, and a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth that was either sarcastic or mocking. Even the life and death critical moment just now did not cause the male princess to change his expression, and King Aki couldn't help but look sideways. But his face was still cold and solemn, and his tone was contemptuous. Is a mere gladiator worthy of my attention? I didn't pay attention to gladiators in the past. It was really because I didn't have much energy to pay attention to it. There is no question of whether it is worth it or not. He spoke in such a tone because the man in front of him was too mysterious, powerful, and detached, and was completely beyond the scope of a gladiator. King Aki deliberately wanted to find out. That's right. You are one of the auxiliary kings of the current dynasty. You have millions of soldiers and control half of the country. How can you have time to pay attention to the trivial people and things in the palace? Pan Yi suddenly smiled and said, "It is really a blessing for a mere gladiator to win the favor of the young Prince Aki." There was no hint of happiness in his tone, and indeed, there was no hint of belittlement in his tone. King Aki, who was about to leave, suddenly changed his mind after hearing his words. He turned back, sat down at the table, picked up the peanuts on the table, and peeled the peanuts. Pan Yi also sat down at the table, face to face with King Aki, just a stone's throw away. He rested his chin on one hand and stared at King Aki peeling the peanuts. The two people's broad sleeves overlapped on the table like a burning cloud. The dragon and phoenix candles were burning high, reflecting two faces that were equally confusing to all living beings. King Aki chewed peanuts loudly. Marrying into the Sioux family has a long way to go, and you also have to bear all kinds of risks. I'm not sure whether it's a blessing or a misfortune. Shawnai raised his eyebrows. There is a long way to go? Are you talking about passing on the family line? What he said was obviously frivolous, but because of his elegant and graceful face, people could not think of evil thoughts. He paused, his gentle eyes fixed on King Aki, and he added seriously, "Me and you? Then I guess you won't be able to give birth to a child if you work hard for a lifetime." King Aki almost spurted out blood. The old blood did not spurt out, but the finely chewed peanuts sprayed towards Pan Ye's stunning face. It was too late to say that, but soon Panya Yunxia's sleeves and robes were covered calmly, and all the peanut dregs were blocked from the sleeves and robes. King Aki wanted to test Pan Ye's bottom. Why didn't Pan Yi want to test King Aki's bottom? After all, no one would marry a man whose name he didn't even know as his wife for no reason. What's more, this person is still a big shot in the limelight. One wrong step may lead to a disaster. He must find out the details of this person. King Aki choked, and his face turned red. Panya handed over a cup of herbal tea, his eyes leisurely. "Have a cup of tea, please." Before King Aki took the tea and took a sip, he heard Dan Yi say again, "Maybe, my dear prince, you can give birth?" The atmosphere suddenly changed. Young Prince Aki didn't say a word. He slapped the teacup on the table. He raised his fist and struck at the door in front of Pan Yi. Hunting for the wind of fists, he came towards him. It was obvious that blood would burst out when he hit him, his nose would be crooked, his eyes would be crooked, and even his brains might be blown out. Pan Yi slid back in an instant, taking the chair with him. Chapter 5, The Ultimate Wedding Drama. King Aki's fierce palm wind enveloped Pan Yi, and Panya's figure shuttled in the shadow of her palm. The hall was instantly filled with rosy shadows, and the whole room was filled with shadows. Su Jia heard the sound of fighting outside and couldn't help but chatted again. "King, do you want me to come in?" King Aki said in a very cold tone, "Watch the outside world. If today's incident is spread to the outside world, you will be the only one to ask." Su Jia's voice sounded helpless and cautious. "Yes. The best gladiator in the Rainmaster Kingdom, I want to learn from you today." A palm went straight to Pan Ye's face. The wind of the palm was like thousands of sharp blades, cutting the red lawn tent behind Pan Yi into pieces. The pieces fluttered in the wind of the palm, but Pan Yi was not damaged at all, and the clothes on his body were intact. As expected, He is the leader of millions of soldiers in the Yushir kingdom. This skill is at its peak. Pan-Yi looked like a swimming dragon. He avoided King Aki's palm and was forced to fly all over the room, but his expression remained unchanged, and he was out of breath. But, young prince, do you plan to cripple your princess on your wedding night? How many pairs of eyes are watching outside? It's not like you haven't heard of my reputation as a demon king. I've already done everything to marry a man, so what's so strange about beating this man to death? Another series of palm winds struck over, with the power to split mountains and rocks. Tables overturned and chairs flew across the room, and even the carved mahogany bed was shattered by the wind, with broken wood flying all over the air. Pan-Yi, who had been avoiding, suddenly changed his style, made a strange change in his movement, stepped forward, reached out with one hand, and grabbed one of King Aki's wrists, and his other hand shot out at the same time, grabbing King Aki's other wrist. His moves became weird and sudden. Before King Aki could react, his entire back was forced to press against his chest. This posture is like a pair of flying birds. Really annoying. I struggled, but I couldn't get away. Let go. King Aki's face turned pale. Being easily captured by him, his self-esteem was really hit hard. Let go? Husband, we haven't drank the Highness wine yet. With a serious face and a serious voice, he said nonsense seriously, I haven't drunk the Highness wine, so how can it be considered a ceremony? If it's not a ceremony, how do you want me to let go? This one is obviously not as easy to deal with as the one from Dongyuan Yinxiu Hall. But then again, people make their own choices, and they have to suffer whatever they are. You have to surrender even if you have to surrender, and you have to surrender even if you don't have to surrender. Young Prince Aki suddenly became furious. You have drunk all the damn wine. Why are you drinking Highness wine? There was a sudden force on his arm, and he threw the man behind him over his shoulder. It was a real offensive technique on the battlefield, without even a hint of tricks. Banya's figure made a 360-degree circle in the air, and his bright red clothes flipped like clouds. When he landed, his figure was strangely wrong, and he came back to King Aki's side. His slender arms were wrapped around King Aki's waist, and his face was almost touching King Aki's cheek. Then we can go straight to the wedding. Now that I'm yours, it doesn't matter whether I'm polite or not, doesn't it? The warm breath was next to his ears. Young Prince Aki had never seen such a battle before. His face was hot with embarrassment, but his mouth was still stiff. A bridal chamber, that's fine. It's just that the bed has collapsed. Where can I have a bridal chamber? If you want to have a bridal chamber, where can't you do it? This is your palace. Even if it's a curtain of heaven and earth, who dares to take care of it? Anyway, your King Aki has not done one or two outrageous things. This sound was like strands of spider silk twining around the ears, until the ears of young Prince Aki felt hot. His heart was like swinging on a swing, swaying in the air, and like spring water bathing in the wind, with ripples rippling around and around. But after all, he is a warrior who has experienced hundreds of battles. Even if his heart is swaying, he can still control his mind. With a force on his shoulder, Prince Aki pushed Shanya's body into the wall, and held both of Banya's wrists tightly against the wall. The only pity was that the young Prince Aki was only 18 years old and had not yet grown up. He did not have a tall figure like Shanyi. If he wanted to speak into his ear, he had no choice but to raise his toes. A pair of eyes like cold stars, looking at Panya's almost flawless face, raised the corner of his mouth. Yes, she is going to have a wedding after all. It's okay for the little girl from Dongyuan to be aggrieved. After all, in terms of beauty, she is not as good as you. Standing on tiptoes, his lips were about to kiss Shanya's lips, but Shanyi turned his head and avoided it. What? Are you scared? Don't worry, I will be very gentle. King Aki stood on tiptoes again. Shanyi tilted her head again and suddenly said with a heavy tone, Why did you marry me? Now that you've married me, why did you marry another girl? Young Prince Aki, don't tell me that you are for both men and women. King Aki opened his mouth to speak, but Shan Yu beat him to it. Don't tell me. You are young, and you're just trying to have fun. It affects the lives of several people, and this matter is not that fun. Little Prince Aki, you are not such an ignorant person. King Aki stood on tiptoes and exhaled deliberately in Shan Yu's ear. I just think it's fun, don't you think? How many dignitaries in the capital openly have wives and concubines and secretly keep prostitutes? Why can't I have a male concubine? Such an iron-blooded prince actually acted like a rogue when he said it. Pan Yu lowered his eyes and happened to see the first button on the chest of young Prince Aki coming apart due to the fight, revealing his snow-white neck and sexy collarbone, and he was startled. The skin of this war king is too good. During this stunned moment, a chi-la sound was heard, and I felt a chill in my chest. When I looked down, I saw that the gorgeous brocade red wedding dress on his body had been torn apart by King Aki. His strong and tight chest muscles were exposed. Chapter 6, Uninvited Guests. Sure, there's someone outside the window. Seeing that King Aki was about to make his next move, Ban Yu whispered into King Aki's ear. Are you scared? Do you think you can deceive me this way? You underestimate me too much. Young Prince Aki pressed his hand directly on Dan Ye's chest. The skin was warm and smooth, and it felt different from what he had imagined. Prince Aki's face turned red. It's true. Ban Yi looked at Aki Wang's apple-red face in amusement. I didn't lie to you. So fucking embarrassing. King Aki turned his head and looked out the window. Regardless of whether what he said is true or not, just treat it as true. At least this can alleviate the current embarrassment. A long and slender shadow was reflected in the window on the opposite side. Shadow was carrying a long object in his hand. Judging from the shape, it was a sword. It's actually fucking real. King Aki gritted his teeth and stamped his feet. It's broken. It's Rong Chongqing. How could she come back? Shan Yu raised his eyebrows with a deep look in his eyes. Is she the Princess Chongqing who fell in love with the young prince and even chased her to the battlefield? King Aki gritted his white teeth and said, Who is she if she isn't her? How can anyone else have the guts to destroy me? Pan Yi suddenly raised the corner of his lips and smiled, pointing at the dilapidated Huadeng just after the battle, and said, Didn't you destroy all your places? It's very courageous to dare to joke at this time. This account can only be settled later. The beautiful figures outside the window have already taken action. Su Yuqi, go to hell. A scolding sound filled with anger was heard, and immediately after, the shadow jumped up and broke through the window. The long sword in his hand came straight towards King Aki and Shan Yi at the speed of light and electricity. Princess, please respect yourself. Su Jia then attacked, but in the end he did not dare to make a mistake and could only try his best to stop him. King, my subordinates were incompetent and did not stop the princess. When Su Jia saw the scene in front of him, he immediately knelt down and lowered his head, not daring to raise his head. Rong Chongqing, who came in with a sword, was stunned when he saw the scene in the room and was overwhelmed by the scene. Pan Yu still had her breasts uncovered, as if she was open to whatever you wanted. King Aki's collar is also slightly open. The most blushing thing is that King Aki's slender and beautiful hands are still pressing on Dan Ye's perfect chest muscles. This scene is too exciting. Princess Chongqing's face turned green and red, and she used all her strength with a long sword in her hand to stab the two of them. Pan Su. Su Yuqi, who else is there? You two bitches, go to hell. The words dog man and woman were thrown around, and he changed his words when he said them. The long sword came to his eyes with lingling sword chi. Before King Aki could make a move, Ban Yi had already reached out and pinched the tip of the sword. Without using any force, he saw the long sword break into two pieces with a crisp sound. One part was